Muted.
Oh, you know what it did? I played the video. I put myself on mute, played the video, not thinking it would automatically take me off mute, and then I've muted myself. I've only been doing this 4 years. We'll get there one day. We'll get there one day. No, but thank you very much. Welcome along to Leeds United latest. A day earlier than normal. My fault. I'm away tomorrow, so I couldn't do a show tomorrow morning. So we're doing our Leeds United latest show today, Thursday morning instead. But we will be back at our normal time next Friday. Just to give you a heads up as well, me and Jay, we will be having a Leeds United catch up on a Tuesday as well. So we've got it penciled in for 6:30 on a Tuesday. So please do tune in then. So it means we can catch up with everything going on at the weekend, especially now where pre-season has started and there's going to be games and stuff. So it'll give an opportunity for me and Jay to have a chinwag about everything going on in Leeds United. And if you're watching along today, get your comments in, like the video, and please do subscribe to the channel as well. Well, Mr. Booker, here we go, another week, and it's a little bit strange. Things are moving, but also not moving. I've got to admit, I did think we'd have something else happen from obviously signing Tarek last week. I was hoping that there would be a deal dropping at some point this week, but transfer windows like that, you think something's going to happen, things sound close, and then it doesn't. I've got my list of stuff to talk about here, and kind of top of that list is something that has actually happened. Max Wober has left the club, contract terminated, and it leaves him open to joining Schalke. Max Wober, Jay, what an interesting career he's had at Leeds United. I know he's not very well liked by the Leeds United fan base. He's considered one of those that scarpered after the relegation for a loan elsewhere. I do think that I do wonder what goes through his head, because at the time he joined, obviously he's an Austrian national player, good reputation. He was only about 25 when we signed him or something. Coming into the Premier League, and then boom, relegation, out of the club, ravaged by injuries. Comes back to the club, but obviously, he's not well liked. I mean, it's even a problem Aronson's facing. Aronson's had 2 good years at Leeds, and he's still not. It doesn't feel like he's fully accepted back to the club. But yeah, Max is gone once and for all, wages off the books. But yeah, it's a weird one with Max. It's like I can't hate on the guy almost, because I just think what a situation to have been brought into. It was a mess at the time, and yeah, it's at least we've got clarity on it. At least it's not going to be another loan. And I know he'd mentioned in an interview that he thought he might be able to push back into the team, but I mean, it was never going to happen, really.
I kind of sit in a similar kind of space as you. I think a lot of people jumped all over him, and I think really when you deep it, he was probably a victim of awful timing, awful circumstance. He came into that team when we could not defend at all, and looked something like a resemblance of a defender. He was the only somewhat of a shining light between January and the end of that season. The problem that he then faced was he came out and said X, Y, and Z about him staying, and he was back in training, and people were. I think Daniel Farke genuinely wanted to make him like vice captain. I think he saw a lot of potential in him, and then he all of a sudden forced to move out of the club to go back to the Bundesliga. But the same defence that I put on Brendan Aronson at the time, and some of the others as well for that matter. The footballers, and these things happen, and money, all of the different factors of what happens when you get relegated, the relegation percentage reduction to his wage. He's not a Leeds fan. All of this, and I totally accept why Leeds fans would be up in arms and not happy, but it was what it was. And then not only did all of that kind of transpire against him, injuries hit more than ever. He's always had a bit of a checkered injury history, and then his injuries really hit. He ended up back in the championship winning side. Yeah, I've mentioned this a couple of times. He contributed on a couple of occasions, scored a big goal at Ellen Road. He was the pass before the pass for the assist that won us the championship on the final day. It's unbelievable. People forget that he made that pass out wide to Willie Gnonto that started that move off. And I genuinely thought if he could have stayed fit when Pascal dropped out of the team that season, he would come in and probably replace him, because I think he's a good player. I think he's a good defender, but his body's portrayed him. If you have a look at last season, he was looking out of shape as well physically. I mean, we're always quite a wide set guy, but he started to look bigger. I think, given everything, the circumstances, a move back to Germany makes a lot of sense. Mutually agreeing to terminate the contract makes a lot of sense. I can't imagine that Max Weber was in a position to demand a huge chunk of that deal. I think that it'll have been very favourable towards Leeds United, given the circumstances, and him wanting the move. Schalke have been promoted back to the Bundesliga. It makes a lot of sense that they would want an experienced campaigner. They'll take a risk on a player like Max Weber, who's got Bundesliga experience. Hopefully for him, he can rebuild his career, because like the previous World Cup 2022, he was there and playing for Austria. Yeah, and then obviously nowhere near potentially playing in that Austrian side that got to the knockout stages this time. So yeah, it should have been so much more. It's mad to think that he only played something like 28 games for Leeds United, and he's been here so long, really, on paper. So, but yeah, good all round for us, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And those injuries taking the toll. I think he only made 3 appearances last season.
Yeah.
Gav, legend wobbler gone gutted. Also from Gav as well, it appears we paid 5 million less for Tarek. Have you seen Juve's post? I've not actually, but interesting. And listen, every penny counts. And also rounding up some transfer business, the only one that got announced this week was Graham Smith leaving the YEP. It's going to be fascinating to see what he does, because I think he's staying. He's still going to be covering Leeds United from what he said on the post. It's going to be fascinating to see. Don't think he's going to do the Athletic move. That's normally what they do. They kind of leave the Athletic. But fascinating, because I do really enjoy Graham's work. I think the podcast they do is brilliant, and yeah, I think he's a superb journalist. So it'll be fascinating to see where he lands next. So we'll include that in our transfer roundup as well. Leeds Live, as Gav says. Couple of the bits then. I mean, the Julian Brandt deal, very interesting one. This is the one where I was getting very kind of giddy about it yesterday, because hearing a lot of positive things. It feels like Leeds United are right kind of front and centre there, and it feels kind of achingly close. It feels like I haven't heard many teams kind of actively linked with him at the moment. So we had the Betis thing, and that died to death. They kind of announced they didn't want to do it. Roma have kind of kept him at arm's length a little bit. It seems like they're waiting for other pieces potentially to fall into place, maybe involving one of our former players. And it feels like Leeds are kind of front and centre. There's a deal there, and it's like, please. I would love to see him coming to Ellen Road. I think if you get him on a free, combined with the Harry Wilson on a free, I think it's absolutely fantastic. I'm really excited about it, because I think a player like that just elevates the quality in your team so much. And yeah, I think he could be one of those kind of signings, almost like Pablo Hernandez, where it's like they become like a figurehead. It's got the potential for someone where we're looking at like a Gordon Strachan type figure, someone who just has that extra bit of quality that can give you something special. So we're just waiting on tenterhooks, but it is rumbling on, Jay. It's been weeks and weeks now, hasn't it? And I mean, he's in a fantastic position, isn't he? I mean, he must have so many clubs kind of desperate to land him. He can pick his deal. I just hope it's Leeds United that he ends up choosing.
It's the dream, innit, for a footballer, really, to put themselves into a really strong position as a free transfer. We spoke about this before, because the signing on bonus basically becomes like a free whack for them, because they have no transfer fee to pay the previous club to buy them out of a contract. So yeah, it's a great place to be in for Julian Brandt. I mean, for me, he's been the most exciting name that we've been linked with the whole window, really. Yeah. Right from the word go of this kind of rumour popping around, I've been like all over it and really, really excited about it. I think, I was quite open and honest and said that I thought Shea Charles wouldn't happen a few weeks ago, and then it looked like it was back on. I know we're going to talk about that one separately. But I've always felt with Julian Brandt like we genuinely stood a real chance of making this one happen. Atletico Madrid came in, and then you're like, well, how can we really compete with that? Champions League, winning the potentially, challenging for La Liga, Diego Simeone, and all the rest of it. But as time's gone on, Julian Brandt's dad coming over to Thorpe Arch, Daniel Farke, the German connection, I do think it matters. I think Anton Stack in there matters. Sebastian Bornau could play a part in that as well, because they do know each other, and it does matter for when footballers decide on new clubs. I also think Leeds United are prepared to give him the length of contract that he wants. If I read in between some of the lines, at 30-year-old, a lot of clubs are only prepared to give them 2 years. Sounds like Leeds United are prepared to give him 3. He knows he's going to play week in, week out. He wants to play in the Premier League, which is what we're kind of hearing. And I don't know how much realistic Premier League interest there is. I know Villa were flirted with an interest, but Villa have flirted with every kind of available player, really, especially free transfer. So you don't know how real that is. And at the end of the day, if we've gone above and beyond to show him that we really want him to be a huge part of this project over the next 3 years, makes a massive difference. And I do think he'd be the best paid player at the club as well. I think that the reality is, to get that level of experience in through the door at Leeds United, you have to put the books down, because it does matter. Yeah. So you're probably talking about paying Julian Brandt around 150 grand a week. Yeah. Probably about 50 grand a week more than Calvert-Lewin. It is what it is for me. Like, we've managed to stay up. If we went back down next season, we'd be able to sell him at 31 for something, and there's very little risk attached to it, even though the wages would be big. With any player, you've got a risk around injuries, but if you look at Julian Brandt's career, he's always fit, he's always available. I don't think you can you can of course put a price on it, but as far as in and around the realms of what we're talking about, I don't think you really can put a price on it, because a free transfer for that quality, we just wouldn't be able to get it. You'd be talking paying 30, 40, 50 million quid, and we're not going to do that. So yeah, I think it's just a wonderful signing if we can make it happen. And I do have this sneaky feeling that it gets over the line, that one.
Yeah, it seems to kind of be building momentum, and I think what it is with Leeds as well, I think we've done this well. I mean, I would say even with Orta, we did this well, was selling the Leeds project. We used to hear about Orta flying off to meet Gakpo, and don't forget, Gakpo was ready to get on the plane and come to Leeds until Louis van Gaal talked him out of it and convinced him to join Liverpool instead. So I think the Leeds project, I think what it is with Leeds, I think a lot of players will have heard of the club, and obviously the Premier League's global, so the more they're in the Premier League, the more they've heard of us. But I can imagine when you sit down with, Adam Underwood now, and he's kind of selling you the project, and you look at, right, we're a Premier League team, that's the first tick. The history of the club, though, I'm sure they kind of delve into a little bit of that. The fan base, passionate, the owners, American backed, a lot of money, ambitious, what we're doing with the stadium. I think it would be a very, not easy project to sell, but there's a lot of very sellable aspects to the Leeds United project. And I'm fascinated to just see. Am I getting an echo there? I can hear myself on my end. Sorry, let me just adjust something. It totally put me off. I won't be a sec. Floor then, what are you doing? Right, there we go. I think I've stopped hearing myself. Yeah, so I think Leeds United would be a very easy project to sell to a player, and I think if you can get them in the room, it's half the battle. If you can get them in the room, and say, look, this is what we want, and you could say to someone like Julian Brandt, look, you can be the one that can lead us into the next era, Europe, whatever that looks like. You can be the figurehead of that. You can be our main man, like you say, highest paid earner, everything like that. And yeah, it feels like hopefully something's bubbling away, and it certainly seems like we're still the main club attached to him. So fingers crossed we can get this done.
I think it's a funny one, because we do live in a time where money overalls everything else, because the volume is so different. Back in the early 90s, late 80s, you'd have players that would go down to the second division that were playing at the top of the first division. You don't get that really nowadays. Jerry Bowen recently, we spoke about it last week, the kind of example that he's done, that is so rare. It's so rare. Calvin Phillips staying at Leeds United and turning down Aston Villa for another season under Marcelo Bielsa, that is extremely rare. Yeah. So, it comes in a time where you do have to obviously make sure that the financial package is there. But you're right, in that there is a project still attached that the right player with the right mentality and the right things between the ears will want to be a part of, as well as the financial gain. I always find it really interesting when a player, like a top level player, I think about it with Ryan at Bournemouth, but Bournemouth in particular was the example I was going to use. Some of the players that they're able to attract there, it blows my mind a little, if I'm honest, because they're playing in front of 11,000 people on the south coast. The Bournemouth's not really a city or a town. I don't even know if it is a city that people will want to travel to nights out. It's not like London. Like somebody signing for Fulham, which is smaller on the scale of a Chelsea or an Arsenal, but I could still understand it because of what's around it. Even a Burnley, to a point I can understand.
Yeah.
But when somebody signs for a Bournemouth, I always think somebody's doing an unbelievable job there of selling this project. They're selling the manager. They're selling the trajectory of their career. When you look at Huijsen and you look at the Ezebanye who went to PSG, and now the progress of Krupi, who's probably going to be sold for 70, 80 million, and Ryan in himself, making the Brazil squad at 19 playing for Bournemouth. There's something that's going on behind the scenes there that's making them players want to sign, other than money, because they would get the money that they're getting at Bournemouth somewhere else. So if you've got the right, facilities and the tools and the manager and the DNA behind the club, you can absolutely sell a project. I think that's why Tarik's here. I truly believe he could have definitely stood on and gone back to Juventus, but he didn't. He wanted to come and play for Leeds United. Harry Wilson, I'm 100% sure would have had a pick of 13, 14 Premier League clubs, easy, on a free transfer. He picked Leeds United. So there is genuine hope that we can sign somebody like Julian Brandt.
Yeah, absolutely. And God, what an asset that would be. Kind of elsewhere, you mentioned him, Shea Charles there, and Leeds United have made their stance clear, as reported by Graham in the YEP, that Leeds United have made a kind of final bid for him, and they're not going to move from that bid. That is the offer that's there. And Southampton seem to be kind of holding out for something else. Obviously, there's been rumblings about Fulham and Crystal Palace and all this kind of thing. Now, obviously, Shea Charles, reports came that it's Leeds United. He wants Leeds United. And it feels like Southampton are kind of holding out a little bit, seeing what they can squeeze, and obviously they're well within the rights to do that. A little bit frustrating, I do feel, for the player a little bit. It's annoying because you just think, just bloody accept the bid, would you? Let us get it over the line, Shea. He wants to come here, release him. It feels like we never had that power in the Championship with our players. It was like, they're just going to come, they're going to take them, and that is it. You can't do anything about it. But it's obviously they've had a massive sale already, Southampton, which has probably eased the pressure on them a little bit. But yeah, it's kind of rumbling on. I mean, if you'd have said to me, we probably first started talking about it 4 weeks ago. If you'd have said 4 weeks ago, it'd still be kind of going on. You'd be scratching your head a little bit. What's your instinct with this one? Because I could fully see a Fulham, Palace, whoever coming in and getting it over the line for 25 to 30 million, and that's the end of it. And Southampton are happy with the offer. I'm glad Leeds are kind of going, right, we're not going beyond this, because obviously every penny has to be managed. And they've got the value in mind. So I'm glad we're not going to keep pushing and pushing. But bit of a shame, because I would love that kind of profile at Leeds United, young, technically gifted, in an area where you always need an engine, you always need numbers in that part of the pitch, and someone with that potential resale value. Two or three good seasons, you could see a massive figure against his name if someone else comes in for him. But yeah, what's your instinct with this one, Jay? Is it kind of, are we on the other side of optimism now? Is it kind of thinking, it might not get done, this?
Yeah, well, it's always felt like it were tricky. That's what I would say. Rejected offers, and when an offer's going to be accepted, usually, unless it's one of these big offers, you don't really hear about it. You didn't hear of any negotiation with Sassuolo over Tarik. It was just 34 million done, right, got move on. So it's always felt like it were going to be a bit of a challenge. I'm very similar to you in that I really like the profile, really like the age, really like the potential resale progression. I think he elevates the ceiling of the overall squad massively. Yeah. But again, I'm same as you in that I'm very happy that Leeds are looking to stand on now. Yeah. We have to have budgets in place. We have to go out and get recruitment in other areas of the pitch. I would argue that the goalkeeper position right now is imperative. I'd say that's essential. That doesn't mean that we then just go and spend the 25 million that we would have spent on Shea Charles and add that to whatever we would spend on a goalkeeper. We clearly, or Daniel Farker more to the point, clearly sees a gap within the squad in the centre midfield position. So we need to go out and recruit in that area. But Shea Charles isn't the only player in the whole market that can fill that role. He's just a good opportunity. It's a good market opportunity given his age, his experience, his nationality, his potential resale value, all of that. So it makes a lot of economic sense as well as a playing staff sense for Leeds United. So I just think it's a good one to balance. If we miss out, it's a shame, but it is what it is. That's very much how I see it. Southampton have done the right thing in that they've protected themselves properly in terms of the way that they've contracted the players, not like Leeds United did, with release clauses and loan clauses and all this. And so, yeah, I think I'm happy to move on if that's what we need. The one thing that I will say about it is it does feel like it's a position in which we can be patient.
Yes.
When we first got linked with Shea Charles, a fair few fans were like, we don't need a centre midfielder. Now we do. We always need to look to continue to improve on the areas. Yeah. But if Shea Charles doesn't come in, it isn't the end of the world overnight. Altanaka, Ethan Ampadu, Anton Stack, Brendan Aronson, Ilya Gruev. We have got names in there that can do the jobs. I might be missing one. I feel like I'm missing one. But you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not as imperative as I feel like the centre-back position. Longstaff.
We always forgot Longstaff. By the way, me and Jay did our squad audit at the last season. We completely forgot about Longstaff. Yeah. I don't know what it is about him, but we just end up forgetting.
It's a big season for him as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a massive season, really. I don't think last season would have been, what he envisaged. I think he would have envisaged playing nearly week in, week out. I think that the signing of a centre midfielder will probably see the pathway for Ilya Gruev to leave. I think he'd be the first. Maybe even Tanaka. Tanaka signed for 3 to 5 million quid, being sold for 15 to 20 makes a lot of sense when you start thinking if we get a Shea Charles in. So, but coming back to my point, we have 6 midfield options there. So if we don't sign a centre midfielder, I wouldn't be like, we're like really short there. We know that they were good enough last season. Whereas in the other areas of the pitch, we genuinely need some improvement. It'll be interesting to see if we start getting linked to some attackers. I know Francolino came out the other day, that link, but it feels at the minute like the attacking positions just are not getting any talk, and I thought that's where a lot of the money would go this summer.
Strange, yeah, it's strange, isn't it? Because it's we've always kind of, last season it was similar. It was like we signed 2 free strikers, and that was about all we did. The attacking areas of it. You thought, like you say, this season you thought, right, got to bolster that. And that's probably, there's only really Brandt and the guy you mentioned there, but, Brandt mainly. And like you say, it's kind of not much, certainly not striker. Yeah. Strikers, doesn't seem to. I get the feeling that it's Dominic Calvert-Lewin and it's Metra as a backup, and I'm not even sure we're going to push, because if Peru stays as well, I'm not convinced we'll do another striker, to be honest.
Well, I'm starting to swing round to that way of thinking. I genuinely am, because I think Calvert-Lewin is obviously such the main man, and rightly so. So any striker that we recruit knows that they're going to have to play second fiddle or really do well to work their way in, or an injury or whatever. So I'm actually now starting to come around with, well, why don't we just not spend 30 million this summer on another striker? Keep Joel Perreault for a year just in case we're absolutely desperate. Let him leave on a free transfer at the end of the year, which isn't ideal, but given the fact that we're now a Premier League club as opposed to paying 15 million in the Championship for a striker, it kind of is nearer there, because we're not signing a striker to replace him this summer.
Yeah.
And then next summer, we'll have a look at Harry Gray. We'll see whether he's available to be the third choice striker. If Lucas Metra decides to leave on a free, then so be it. We'll sign someone else that does that backup option. I'm starting to come round to it in my head that there is some logic to it. Noah Okafor can play up front as well, and we've seen that he can do that to a certain degree. I definitely don't think he's the out-and-out number 9, but he can play as a second striker. And then he signed Julian Brandt, and all of a sudden you've got things that you can do in and around that area of the pitch in an attacking sense that makes a lot of sense, because our problem last season wasn't necessarily putting the ball in the back of the net at times. It was the creativity that was the problem. And with Harry Wilson and potentially Julian Brandt and then Noah Okafor in there as well, you start to look at it and think, actually, it's quite exciting. Yeah. So there is some logic in not being linked to much in an attacking sense. My surprise, I think, comes with the fact that we're talking about potentially going into another season with Dan James, Willie Gnonto, and Joel Perreault, as the three kind of second options. I didn't think that Farker would want them all them three as backup options, and I didn't think that they'd be particularly happy with it either, especially Nonto and Pirot. But who knows? You don't know.
I agree. I mean, one of my concerns is kind of Noah Okafor's fitness levels, and I don't want to be going back to It's trying to fit onto in our Metcha. You know, when we saw Metcha on left, like, no, please, God, no. Just something I've just kind of seen on Twitter. I just want to pull this up as well. This is Alex Crook, TalkSport's Alex Crook. James Trafford to Leeds United seems to be hotting up. Leeds have also made an offer to free agent Julian Brandt, which we know. James Trafford, I mean, it's a mega deal. We know that. He's got 5 years on his Manchester City contract. He's in the England squad. Age profile, reputation, all that stuff. You would suspect it to be a mega deal, but I mean, this is, gathering some momentum. Is this, Jay? I thought not a chance, and I've thought not a chance for a long time, but I don't know. This week it just seems to have slightly changed a little bit, but it would be a whole chunk of change, would that, if we're going to get that one done?
It would. There's a lot around this deal. I'm going to probably be the minority with this, but as you know with me, I'll just always say it as I see it. Like, I'm not kind of in this camp of being super gassed by it or super excited by it for a number of reasons. Is he a good goalkeeper? Yes, he is a good goalkeeper. Is he a great goalkeeper? No. I don't think he is. Now, he's got the potential to go on, but we have to remember, James Trafford was brought in at Burnley and got replaced by Muric at the back end of, the second half of...
He did a horror show, didn't he? That's
he had a thinker. And they got relegated, and he stayed in the Championship. And Muric got a move to Ipswich. Yeah, so when Ipswich were looking at signing a Premier League goalkeeper, they didn't go for James Trafford, they went for Muric. And James Trafford ended up having a rebuild season in the Championship. He had a great season, but he also had a great defence in front of him in a defensive style team under Scott Parker. He barely had anything to do. Now, he's still a good shot stopper, don't get me wrong, I saw him make some unbelievable saves. But we have to talk about it for the context that it actually is. He was then bought in by Manchester City to be Edison's replacement. He had one game, stunk the place out, and they went and signed Donnarumma. Now, the likelihood is that the Donnarumma deal was probably already a potential, but he was signed as number one with Trafford. He was signed as the potential number one for Manchester City, and within weeks he was bombed out for probably the best keeper in the world. But still, that happened. You then also have to talk about the financial aspects of this deal. So you're talking straight away, I reckon, 40 million quid, right? Yeah. That's bad enough, but they're then going to have a percentage sell-on fee clause of some sort of Manchester City, because that's what they do. The likelihood is if they agree a deal with Leeds United, they might even force a buyback clause in there. So if he has an unbelievable season, Manchester City will probably be like, well, we're going to have first refusal on him, and it's going to be 55 million. So it'll be like 15 million profit, which it's not then the potential resale value of a Shea Charles, where you're selling him for 25 million, you can potentially sell him for 65, 70.
No.
Do you get what I'm going? So and then you talk about wages. I've not even spoke about wages. So once you put all that together, I am very, very cautious with this deal, personally.
I agree with that. The thing that is a red flag to me is his experience in the Premier League so far, and the fact that why would City bomb him out after a game? Yeah. What was it that they the chance to sign Donnarumma, but you would have thought James Trafford would be a Pep type goalkeeper, good with his feet, blah blah blah. Yeah. That horror show he had at Burnley last time he was in the Premier League, and my concern is that kind of that experience so far. I mean, what I would say, obviously in his favour, 23, nowhere near his peak. Is it like, I've heard other people comparing him? Could he be your Jordan Pickford? Could he be like that type of thing where you get a keeper, he's there for 10 years, great, but like you say, City clever with buyback clauses and all the rest of it, and for them it's nothing, is it? They can go, we'll have a 50 million buyback clause, and then they'll come and pinch him if he has 2 awesome seasons.
I'm not saying, Brownie, that there's not positives to the deal. Yeah, his age and his qualities. He's a good goalkeeper. But when you weigh it all up, the problem with fans in these kind of situations is they get super excited without really thinking about the overall context and the perspective of the picture. And that's what we're here to do. Like, and I very much kind of build the full picture. If that sale goes, if that transfer goes badly, you are in a real hole, a real hole, because we're going to overpay straight away. What if he has a Milan Melier? Like, what if he's regression? And I know that can happen with any signing, but you've got
Alex Cairns, get your gloves on, mate. You're going in.
I would personally rather. I'm really excited by the Milinkovic-Savic deal. I was last year. That signing excites me. Big, 6'9", scary goalkeeper, 15 million quid. Pretty low risk, really. And it's a shame we haven't got Carl Darlow as a backup, really, because that would be perfect, just in case it don't go right. I still think we need 2 goalkeepers, really, given the sounds of the Lucas Perry situation. Yeah. But that's the signing that I would like. I quite like Zetterstrom as well at Derby. I think that makes a lot of sense. But I think that probably makes more sense as a number 2 with another, and maybe even have 2 number 1s and say, look, fight it out. I'm not totally against that. I know a lot of people really don't like that as an idea, consistency in the goalkeeper. I get it as well, but I think I think it'd be a risk to have him as the man.
Yeah.
If you're keeping Lucas Perry for a year, Zetterstrom would be perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect, because he would then understand his position. He could see what happened with Carl Darlow last season. I'm going to stop waffling, but I think Trafford's risky. I think it's really. If it happens, I'll be excited. But go on.
Same. Do you know what my fear would be? That first game, he makes a mistake, and it's like fans on it, like, and it's just like it becomes the goalkeeping headache again. I do want to say David Ornstein's just 15 minutes ago dropped an article on this as well, so he's got an official article about Leeds and James Trafford now, saying apparently he's favouring a move to Ellen Road, and he's Leeds United's top target currently. So we'll wait and see. I will be.
Sorry, go on.
No, I will just be fascinated to see what happens with it and what the fee would be, because I mean that is not going to be cheap. I mean, I can't see less than. It won't be less than 35, would it?
I think it'll be 40.
Yeah.
40. Yeah. What would you rather have Trafford at 40 than Suzuki at 30? I know that's gone a little bit quiet.
Question, I mean, I only saw a little bit of him in the World Cup, but I wasn't blown away by Suzuki.
No. He had moments. He had some good moments.
He had some good moments there, but I wasn't like. It's so tricky with keepers. I would almost prefer if you kind of were able. I mean, the ideal thing for me would have been if Darlow would have stayed and had a solid season, but maybe a lower profile, less expensive, kind of steady Eddie type goalkeeper that gets you through. It doesn't have to be spectacular. It doesn't have to be there for 10 years, but kind of sees you through until maybe other options open up potentially. I don't know. I mean, maybe Leeds are looking at this like this is their potential to get their Jordan Pickford. I don't know.
And I get it. I mean,
it's risky.
All the reaction that I see over socials is all get James Trafford, and I hope whoever comes in and sees this stream it listens to what I'm saying, because not that it'll make any difference, but I think it's really good to have a good perspective and context for this. And you're right, like we don't want to be chucking loads of pressure on him. I mean, for me, if it were, and I know this is all playing like illusion game, but I'd have much rather stuck with Carl Darlow and Lucas Perry for another season than sign James Trafford for 40 million quid. Personally, I would much prefer that.
I agree, and I wonder, could Leeds come to regret not just saying to Darlow, look, you're number 1, just to get him signed up? But we'll see. Top Banana, welcome along, morning all. Michael, did Leeds get anything for Wober move to Schalke? No, he didn't. It looks as if it was contract termination. Then he's gonna move on a.
It happens in football, though, doesn't it, mate?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the other outgoings, then obviously we the squad has gone to the USA for a pre-season tour out there. Missing players: Joe Gelhardt, Larger Ramazani, and Jack Harrison. I mean, Verber's already gone, but Ramazani, Harrison, and Gelhardt, we're expecting movement on them. Large is an interesting one. Obviously, it seems like the Valencia move, they're trying to push for things, but the problem a lot of these European clubs, they just do not have the money, do they? They don't have the money for us to get back what we paid. Even it feels like it. We've seen this time and time again. We've sent players out all over Europe, and it's you can't get an obligation from these teams because they haven't got the money. They haven't got Premier League money, but. I mean, Ramazani. I mean, what would you be happy with in terms of a fee from him? 10 million. I mean, is that kind of enough? I mean, no, the Premier League's going to pick him up. No, the Premier League team's going to pick him up unless a Coventry or Ipswich get desperate, late in the window or something like that. Where else is the money? Championship team maybe, but it's
Norwich were linked with him, weren't they?
yeah.
Norwich were quite sure, and that tells you where Ramazani's profile is. People hear the name Valencia, they hear the team name Valencia, and attach what they were 25 years ago to it. The La Liga, in terms of funding, is chalk and cheese to the Premier League. Valencia were battling relegation for most of last season. They only stayed up in the last couple of months. They're not what they were. So, the bottom end La Liga is probably the kind of top end championship over here in terms of quality. So that's where he's at. There is still some people that will harp on that Ramazani should be getting game time for Leeds United. It's nonsense. We saw flashes, we saw moments, but he wasn't good enough. He wasn't consistent enough. His attitude wasn't there. There's a reason that he left and Willie Gnonto stayed. And I do, I've got my reservations with Gnonto, but I do think his attitude has been really good since being reintegrated back into the team. He's always, been involved, always celebrating with the players, whether he's on the bench or not, always gives what he can when he comes on. So there's a complete difference between the two. There's no way back for him and the others. In terms of a transfer fee, I think 10 million is such a stretch for a team like Valencia now.
Yeah,
it really
that's
is.
The problem, isn't it?
It is. And then you're left with loans and obligations, and then they don't meet the obligations. It becomes real tricky to navigate in the market. And the others, I seen Michael mention Joffe. It's all about who wants the players, and if there's no interest, you can't force interest onto another team. Hull obviously have got interest in Joe Gellart. They'll just wait until the end of the window, and then Leeds will be in a position where they need to sell him at a cut price deal, and they'll have to shift him on. We will get a fee for Joe Gellart. It's just about whether it's what we would see as acceptable. Unfortunately, the ship has sailed on Joe Gellart being a big prospect with a big fee attached to him. Yeah. We're just going to have to make do with what we get. And I feel kind of Ramazan is probably in a similar kind of ballpark to that as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing with Joffe as well, I mean, he had a good season with Hull. Obviously, they get promoted, but he didn't play in the playoff final, and it wasn't like he was incredible where Hull were coming up going, we have to sign him.
He had a really good spell, didn't he?
He had a good spell.
Dropped off towards back of the season.
So they're not desperate, they're not absolutely desperate like I think what we were hoping for. Jack Harrison, he's been linked with MLS teams, we talked about it before. I mean, it's we'll wait and see. But again, I mean, but it's what's the fee going to be? I mean, for someone like him, I think you've just got to take a cut price. I think you just get him off the books. I mean, he's just got to be out of the club. I mean, now.
I genuinely would. I would, if I were in Leeds United's position, and this, we might be surprised, and this might actually end up happening. He's got 2 years left on that deal, right? At 70 grand a week. You do the maths. Yeah, it's millions over the 2 years. The MLS won't be able to pay him that. We will be very fortunate to get any fee, because what will happen is that the agreement will have to be that we subsidise some of this 2 years. Even though a player moves on, most of the time they still kind of expect that 2 years, especially if we want to move the player on actively. So the likelihood is that the transfer fee will probably be paid to Jack Harrison.
Yeah.
That's the truth, and we won't have to then pay his contract for the next 2 years, or some of the contract, or we'll have to subsidize. The MLS might be able to pay him 25 grand a week, and we might agree for 2 years to pay him another 25 grand a week. Things like that happen. And then we might take 5 million or 3 million or something. We just need to get him gone. Like the regression in that lad, bless him. I feel a bit sorry for him, I do. But the player that I watched when he played for Leeds United last season was a 2. in comparison to his full potential of what he was under Marcelo Bielsa. I could not believe the footballer I was watching. It was like watching a basic League One winger. It was horrendous. He couldn't go past the player. So yeah, he needs to go. They all need to go, don't they? Really, them four that we've mentioned, them four that missed the trip.
Yeah, absolutely. Gaia, please, Verber's gone and the wages are off the books. Could not get a fee as injuries were horrendous. I now hope we get news that Harrison follows. Yeah, indeed. Well, we're over there for the USA tour, and it was good to see pictures of Farker coming through as well, actually, because we'd not heard anything from the club. We'd not seen him in action, and then obviously we've seen Farker. I'm actually looking forward to kind of hearing from Farker as well. I'm kind of excited to see what he's got to say about things and where he thinks the squad's at, because obviously there was that kind of line in the sand, Drew, last season when he was like, I've achieved my goal, and right, what's next? So I'm fascinated to see if we'll get a glimpse into kind of where he's at and what's going on. Obviously he's only got a year, he's in his final year of his deal at Leeds now. It's fascinating to see what's happened there. I've never seen as little propaganda about Farker by this club than I have this kind of pre-season. It's strange to me. Now I could be reading too much into it, but I've never seen so little about Farker on just like the Twitter feed, for example. And I don't know if they're holding it back for an announcement that maybe he's signed an extension or whatever. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what he's got to say about how things are at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. I personally think he'll be delighted with the deal so far. I think if you were to be in a room with Daniel Farker and ask him, privately about the transfer business, and we've got Tarek Mehrovic and Harry Wilson in, I think he'd be like, great start. That's an unbelievable start. Quality has been risen of the squad. The names that we've been linked with are very Daniel Farker signings, I would say. I think they make a lot of sense. So it looks as if we're, planning ahead with this year has been Daniel Farker. I would be shocked if there's not a new contract before the start of the season, personally. But who knows? That's football, isn't it? Anything could happen. We could maybe go into another season. I believe the club would want him to sign another year, and I reckon there's probably some middle ground in which he would want to probably have another 2. And it's probably around that's going to be the issue. And I can understand the club's point to it as well. Me and you have been on this show forever and defended Daniel Farker for large parts of it, but we've also been well versed in the acknowledgement that there'll come a time where we outgrow him, I think. Yeah. And there'll be a season where we're like, right, if we want to go to that next level, we need to move on from Daniel Farker. But we haven't seen that yet. No. This season, if Daniel Farker elevates himself again and gets another 10, maybe even 15 points on the board, I'd be like, let's go again. Let's go again. Because I like the continuity. I like the consistency. It's good for our football club. So, yeah. I completely agree. Michael, as you say, is there any reason why Farker hasn't signed an extension yet? Well, I mean, no doubt there must have been some big conversations going on about the direction of the club. We know what Farker said in that press conference. I agree with you. I mean, for me, he overachieved last season. I think keeping us in the league, a cup run to the semi-final, I think it was overachievement. What I've always liked about Daniel Farker, it really feels like in Farker we trust. I think you get a solid style of play. We don't get hammered. We're competitive. I would say 75% of the games last season we were, certainly points were dropped that we deserved wins from. And I'm super interested to see where it goes. And like you say, they might hit that kind of curve one day where we're like, right, we need to change. But you've got to be so careful. I mean, we saw last time, when the linchpin left, you're left kind of scrabbling about. One decision you get wrong in the Premier League, especially management level, it's big, isn't it?
You're screwed. And we can't go back the other way. We just can't.
I'll just say as well, I think fans are so fickle at times. Bear in mind, this is the same manager that media, opposing fans, and our own fans have slammed for year after year that he couldn't do it at the Premier League. He couldn't do it at Premier League level. And he just kind of put up and shut up and just took it and just delivered. He showed that he could. The first time that he kind of shows his teeth at the back end of last season, that he's like, right, I'm here. I'm gonna actually now fight back a little bit and you know, stand up for the fact that I want to progress and be successful. People are then like, well, no, you should be getting back in your box. I know, I'm all behind the way that he presented himself last season. I think Simon Jordan made a great point to it that he probably should have had them conversations in private, and I'm sure that he did, but it's hard for him to kind of transmit the message that he wants to put across without doing it in the media. So I see both sides of it, but for me, I think he was absolutely fair placed with, you know, all the stick that he got, given everything that he achieved last season, to come out and come out throwing punches.
Yeah, absolutely. Skip, I'm shocked we didn't have a sell-on clause for Somerville.
Actually.
Yeah, well, they met his release clause, though, didn't they? So you don't get a sell-on for a release clause.
We had no option to be able to put a release clause in, but you can't do that when you have a minimum fee release clause, because that's the deal. It's 25 million quid, so we couldn't do it, based on the fact that we missed out on promotion of the season. But what I really wanted to speak to you about was just very quickly this kind of thing with the money and going to Saudi, because I know this has happened now for years. You know, China. Before we had the MLS, you know, there were players that went over to the MLS way before the end of their careers, even way before I was born, you know, as they started trying to help the profile of football over there. He's gone, I've just got an article up on left-hand screen here, he's gone from earning 50 grand a week at West Ham to earning 250 grand a week in the Saudi. 50 grand a week taxed, by the way, turning into 25 grand a week, at 250 grand a week untaxed. Now, I am very much...
turn that down.
Yeah. I am very much from a school that I don't get fans upset when a footballer in his career decides to chase the money. It's a very short period of time. It's a very short career. They earn the money while they can. That's what you do in any career. Now, the difference in football is that they already earn so much money at a lower down level than the big money in Saudi. I get that. And then achievements within the career. But you know, if Chris Somerville went to Manchester United and won 2 FA Cups, and let's just say in the next 10 years he win 1 Premier League, and after he retires, nobody remembers Chris Somerville. There'll be somebody that they talk about for, you know, occasionally on a nostalgic moment. He's got the rest of his life to live. And for me, why wouldn't you do that with the comfortability of all that money?
The way I look at it is, it's the options in front of him. Now, Roma obviously are the ones pushing, and Roma have got Champions League football, and they are a historic club. Yeah. But it's not a team that's going to win the Champions League. They're probably not even going to win Serie A. They're probably not even going to be in the challenge for that. If it was Real Madrid that win, if it's Barcelona that are winning, it's a different kettle of fish. But if it's just Roma, no disrespect to them, but 250 grand to go and do it. Look, as a thing of football, it's always disappointing when the best players in Europe at peak age leave to play in a non-league, really, to just play in a league where I've a load of money. But like I say, it's happened before. We always remember Oscar, don't we, who left Chelsea at the peak of his career in China. And it's going to happen. I tend to agree with you. I don't think anyone would be making a different decision, to be honest. I mean, that it's obscene money. I mean, Ruben Neves did it, didn't he, at Wolves? You know, he left at 25, 26 to go do it. And look, if it's a real historic club in Europe, maybe it's different. But
it's really funny to me because, you know, there were a time when players did this down to the second division or the Championship. You know, they'd go from... We talked about Gordon Strachan earlier, and there's others, you know, that have dropped down from a Premier League team to play at the Championship because the Championship team was more prestigious and paying more money. Yeah. But nobody batted an eyelid at that because it was kind of seen as like a project or, oh my God, he's stepping down a level. But nobody batted an eyelid, but yet people, they go over to Saudi and get so much money. But because they're playing at this inferior level, because it's mad to me how twisted people get it. I mean, not that I'd sell my soul for money, but
I know what you mean. It's to kick a ball about. Come on. Yeah. Good stuff, right? Well, we're going to wrap it up there. So thank you to everyone who joined and watched along. Please get your comments in, get a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. Myself and Jay, we will be back Tuesday, 6:30. Set your clocks, notifications, all that stuff. We're going to pick up the other side of the weekend. Who knows? Might be movement on Trafford. That seems to be gathering a pace. We've got obviously the friendlies that are happening in the USA, which we'll pick up on as well. So please do join us then. I've been Sim Brown, with me, Jason Booker. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, mate.
And we'll see you again soon. See you Tuesday. Take care. Bye-bye.